right, guys, so today we are going to walk you through step by step on how to frame some walls in this given space and then build and add some arches, okay? So as you can see, the house has been completely remodeled. This is a blank canvas for us. We didn't know exactly what we were gonna do. We decided upon this design here. You can see it's on the wall, it's taped on the wall. We want to do a really cool built-in kind of study area for the family. With these nice decorative arches, okay? So 3 equal spaces with walls in between, all right? So kind of a twofold project today. We're gonna show you how to add some walls, some basic non-load bearing walls, super simple to do, and then fill it in with those decorative arches, okay? So frame the walls first, and then we'll show you how to measure and install the arches. First thing first is I took inventory of my space. I want to make sure that everything is equally spaced, okay? So after discussing with the homeowners exactly what they wanted, I know exactly where to put my walls, okay? So what I did here is, you can see on the walls, I've went ahead and actually added some lines to my ceiling, to my walls, to my floor, and basically those represent where the walls are gonna go. So I did some quick math and was able to determine exactly where everything's gonna go. There's a couple different ways you can do that. We use, in this case, a laser level, which kind of moves in both directions. So you can see here, the laser levels are so cool nowadays. I mean, they just come up with so many different functions, but we just want a true 90 degree, right? So we can get our floor measurement where our walls are gonna end all the way through and congruent. And then we also wanna transfer that up onto the wall itself. So we've got an existing wall measured down to the floor, and we just transfer everything up. So this mark on the floor represents the same mark on the ceiling, and then we just transfer our wall. So in essence, we're gonna have a wall here that dies into this termination point. We're gonna have a wall here, a wall here, and one on the very end. So everything's symmetrical. All right, again, following that very important drawing. All right, so the first step would be, on our end, would be to install our wall framing. We're gonna do it very simply. We're gonna do stick framing. I don't think we've ever done this before in a video for you guys, but we had a lot of people asking about how to stick frame versus build a wall on the ground and put it up. So we're gonna stick frame, put our plates in, and then fill in our wall framing. So that's the first step. So at the lumber store, we picked up dimensional lumber 2x3, okay, versus like 2x4, pretty standard. So in this case, we wanted to pick up 2x3, right? So these are 2.5 wide by 1.5 inches wide on the other side. So the reason why is because the design kind of called for that, right? We didn't want these big columns, so instead of having to buy 2x4s and rip them down, we were able to purchase 2x3s. That's what these are. So 2x3s, Douglas fir. What I'm gonna do, as you can see, we've got our laser line up. I'm gonna install my top plate that runs all the way across from that wall to this termination point. That's our first installation. The reason why we're doing that is in order to nail our top plate, we wanted to determine which way our ceiling joists are running, right? The ceiling joists, in this case, are running perpendicular to this wall. So they're running like this, okay? If they were running like this, we would have to do something a little bit different. We would have to add some backing to ensure we had something there. But since they're running perpendicular, we just have to locate where they are on the ceiling and then fasten our board to it so we have backing. Okay, so I'm gonna find out where they all are and then install my top plate. So we talked about finding the direction of the joist, right? We found them, they're going this way. Now we need to locate them or actually mark them so that we know where to fasten. Okay, so it's super simple. You could, a couple different ways we could do this. We could use a stud finder, which you can pick up at your local home improvement store. Those are fairly accurate, in which case, you know, it triggers and tells you when it feels like there's a stud there and you mark it. I just am old school. A lot of times you can knock and you can hear where it's dense. And then I found this one, right? Because I knocked and found it. So you mark that one. You know you got one there. So we're just gonna mark it with a pencil. And then typically there should be one every 16 inches or so away from it. So if I go 16 inches and test, there should be one here, close to it. So the rule of thumb is every 16 inches is kind of the general rule. So I marked it, I know there's backing there that runs all the way back to that wall. I know I got one there. I'm gonna find the next one and go all the way back down to the other side, so. All right, so as you can see, we marked all of our backing pieces. So these represent our ceiling joists, which are behind the drywall. I marked every single one. with a pencil, okay? Now I know for a fact that wood is running behind the drywall right there. Okay, so now it's very simple. I'm just gonna install my top plate and fasten it where there's backing, and that moves on to the next step. All right guys, so as you can see, we got our top plate in there. Again, it's non-structural. I'm just gonna find out where my backing is. Make sure I'm on my blue line, which I already previously snapped. I'm just gonna fasten it all the way through. Pretty straightforward. I'll take this next piece and measure it in, and then we'll move on to the next step. All right guys, so the next step in our wall framing application before we do our arches is to install this top plate here. So there's 4 of them, 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm gonna measure them, 22 3/4. They should be all pretty close to the same. I'll cut 4 of them and install them. Okay, cool. So remember, we're called stick framing walls, okay? So versus lay it out on the ground and then throw the wall up, which we typically do in a lot of our videos. In order to stick frame, we need support on the top, support on the bottom, and then we fill in our studs, okay? So in this case, we've got our top plate situated. Look, that's where our walls are gonna go, but we need to put support down on the floor, okay? So we marked where our walls are gonna come out. They're gonna come out to here. We know that the wall transfers all the way down because we made our mark. We're just gonna measure and put our plates in. All right, so that's the next step. All right guys, so as you can see, I measured my plates, my bottom plates. I cut them all to length, and then I squared off of my line that I made, which is the same as the top, transferred back a mark, and then marked where it needs to go. So now I just install this. I know I have backing here because there's plywood underneath, so I'm just gonna line everything up, fasten it, and then we'll move on to the next step, which is stick framing. So I want to pay attention and make sure that I'm okay if I'm loose against the wall here, guys, but I want to make sure I'm close to the line, right? The edge of the line there, that's where the wall is basically going to finish. All right, so the next step in the process of framing these little partition walls is to measure our studs and put them in, okay? So depending on how your floor condition is, whether or not it's level, we may have to do each wall individually pieced as far as taped in. The reason why we do that, or stick frame in a situation like this, is because we don't know what the existing conditions are, okay? So that's kind of one of the reasons why you would stick frame versus throwing a wall up. If you build all these walls the same and the floor's out, you might have a difference, and so it might not hit the ceiling or it might be too tight. So that's the reason why we stick frame in this application. So it's quick and easy, and it doesn't take a whole lot of extra time. All right, so in this case, I'm just gonna go through the process of measuring. I've got 92.5, and on the back side, same thing, 92.5. I'll cut 3 pieces, 92.5. I'll measure and go through the same process of measuring and cutting all of these 4 slots. Get them ready, and then we'll install them all at once. So as you can see, guys, I've got all my studs cut and measured to length individually for each wall section, okay? Now we're gonna stick frame, okay? So the studs just go in individually, okay? You crown everything so that it's crowned out. And that's essentially what stick framing is, okay? So I went through and marked about halfway on each plate, top and bottom. You can see I made marks on top and bottom. We're gonna fill in 1 on each end and then 1 in the middle, okay? So rinse and repeat this on all 4 walls, and then we'll be ready for our arches. So yeah, as you can see, guys, with stick framing, we just nail to the top plate and the bottom plate, and then we move on to our next. Nail, and then we move on to the next one. We'll come back later and put blocking in. We wanna crown all of our studs. If we got a natural crown in it, in this case, I want them to crown the same direction. So in this individual case here on this wall, we're gonna put them out because the cabinets go on the inside, crown go out, won't have any problem. See, our walls are in, we stick framed everything, and we're ready to go to our next step. So a quick recap on that, we marked everything where our walls are going to go evenly so that we could accommodate the layout for the new cabinets, right? We made sure that everything was square and ready to go. we found our backing up top, right, on our ceiling, and then we installed our first step was to install our top plate, okay? Then we went through and added our side plates, okay, top and bottom, and then filled in what we call our studs for stick framing, okay? Afterwards, we finished off with blocking all the way down. Now we're essentially ready to fill these cavities with the arches. We move on to the last and final step of the process. So stick framing 101, 1, 2, 3, 4 walls, very, very easy to do. Anybody can do it. Now the next step is arches. So arches, there's two different kinds. There's a true arch or a round arch, we call them, or a ellipse arch, okay? In this case, we're gonna make true round arches, okay? The easiest way to do that is to simply measure your overall width, and you basically want to divide it in half, and that'll give you your spring for your radius. And I'll show you how to do that step by step. But first things first, we're going to build a round or a true arch. Okay, that's what we call those in the industry. So what I did here is, as you can see, to get ahead of the game, I marked on the existing wall where my arch is going to go up against. This arch is going to be kind of a barrel arch. It's going to go all the way back. Okay, it's not just going to be an arch that goes right here and that's going to drop or go back up to the ceiling. The arch is going to continue all the way back to this wall. So kind of call it like a barrel arch or a larger arch. I marked my studs up against the wall in order to determine where I'm going to be able to nail to when I go to install my arch. So I transferred my lines down. Okay, I marked them. I did the same thing in each bay, you can see. So I went ahead and actually measured where my studs are. The easiest way to find your studs, like we talked about earlier, is to, either find a stud, use a stud finder. Every 16 inches there should be one. We certified that there is, okay? The next step and what we need to do as far as installing our arch is create what we call backing support for our arches, okay? So as you can see on the top here, I went ahead and installed my top pieces, okay? Now basically what these are is it's gonna allow us to frame the arch, build the arch, and then when we go to install it, we're gonna have something to nail to. So very similar to framing 101 elements, we need backing, we need support to be able to hold the arch. I held this piece of, you'll notice that I held this piece of backing back from the edge about 3/8 of an inch. Okay, I did it on every single one. I just marked 3/8 of an inch from the outside edge, scribed it, and then installed my backing piece. And the reason why I did that, okay, is if you come over here very carefully, you can see the plywood that we've got to build our arches is 3/8 of an inch thick, okay? So we're using 3/8 inch plywood, which when we're done building our arches and putting it together, when we go to install it, okay, we go to put our arches in, that 3/8 thickness is gonna go and flush right out with the outside edge of our wall. Okay, so that's the reason why I did that. I'm gonna do the same thing on the sides, but before I put my backing in on the sides, I wanna exactly know how far and how big to make that piece. I'll show you how to do that right now. So what we did here to start our arches and set everything up is, the best way to do it on a round or a true arch is to take your overall measurement, okay, of your space. So in this case, you can see our measurement is plus or minus 43 inches. I'm actually gonna call it 42 7/8 just because there's no reason to make it actually, super duper tight. When the drywall gets in and everything's good, it'll get covered up. So I'm gonna go 42 7/8 is my width of the opening, okay, all the way back. I take that measurement and I transfer it over to my plywood over here, okay? 3/8 ply, OSB, okay, this comes in a 4x8 by 3/8 inch thick plywood. The reason why we use 3/8 is because it's very easy to cut with a jigsaw when we build our arches. We talked about 42 7/8 is our overall measurement, okay? So what I did is I pulled from one side of the piece of plywood and I marked 42 7/8, okay? I marked it here and then I marked it all the way back on the other side, okay? And then I snapped the line, I transferred the line all the way through. So basically, if you can visualize this, this is the width of our arch, okay? I don't want to use full piece of plywood, I want to use 42 7/8, obviously. A couple things we have to consider when putting this arch in versus the existing application we have. We want our arch, based on the drawings that we were provided by the homeowner, we want our arch to be 5 inches from the top of the ceiling, okay? So the top of our arch, the very, very top of the radius is going to be at 5 inches down from the ceiling. So what we do is we go back here and we look at our existing conditions, or the conditions that we framed, and you can see we've got our ceiling and we want to be 5 inches below that where our arch starts. I've got a piece of backing here for our top plate, okay? That's 1.5 inches. And then I've got my recessed backing here, which is where my arch is going to go. Now if you could visualize with me, this is the outside edge of our wall. And then the arch is going to go right up inside and nail to the backing. So this piece right here, that is set. It's 1.5 inches down from the ceiling. It flushes out with our wall. It's perfect. My backing is where I'm going to nail. So I'm going to take into consideration I want to be 5 inches down. So I'm going to remove 1.5 inches. So in essence, my arch is going to be 3.5 inches tall at the spring, or at the very top of the arch. So where the arch starts, I'm going to go 3.5 inches bigger, and then I'm going to nail to my backing. And then plus the 1.5 inches will bring down 5 inches. So it might seem confusing. I'll show you how that works. But how that transfers out over here is I came down from the very top, which is basically the top of the arch. Okay, you got to visualize. Right now it's a square, but you got to kind of visualize what it's going to look like at the very finish. So I've got 3.5 inches down. Okay, remember we talked about that. Plus the 1.5 inch top plate. All right. So I marked 3.5, 3.5. I snapped a line. The next step, okay, so I snapped a line all the way through. This represents 3.5. So we've got our 42 7/8, which is the overall width of the arch. And then we came down 3.5 plus the 1.5 inches, which is already there. And that'll, in essence, represent that 5-inch drop when we start our arch. The last and final step in determining how to lay out a true arch is, it's very simple. You take the halfway dimension between 42 and 7/8. Okay, and make a mark. In this case, half of 42 and 7/8 is 21 and 7/16. Okay, so I marked 21 and 7/16, 21 7/16. See it? And then I came down here and did the same, 21 7/16. I connected those lines with a snap line. Kind of hard to see with the OSB ply, but that's what I did. So recap, quick recap. Started with the overall width of the opening. Okay, marked it all the way down. Came down the height of my arch where the design or where the renderings show, marked that. Came through and measured halfway, which is halfway of the opening, and snapped a line. Okay, the last and very last step in determining how this arch is going to shape out is, remember, it's a true arch. It's a round arch, so it's a true circle. We're creating a true circle arch. I simply take the halfway dimension, okay, which is 21 7/16 from the top of the arch. Remember, we want the arch to be 5 inches from the ceiling. So you don't want to pull from here. If you pull from here and measure over, it's gonna throw your dimensions off. So that's why I marked. That represents the top of our arch. All right. So I came down from the top of our arch, 21 7/16, and made a mark. So that is the basic center of this whole circle. Now, if we were creating a circle, that would be the center of it. But we only want half the circle. We just want the arch, the top portion of it. Okay. So what I do now is a couple different ways you can do it. You can set a screw and a string line and pull off the string line and mark it. But simply what I'm going to do is I'm just going to set a nail. This is one way to do it. Set a nail at the halfway mark. Okay. I just hook the nail. Okay. And then I mark. I just follow the mark where this terminates. Okay. So I'm hooked on the nail. And I'm just going to pull 21, remember we're working on halves, 21 7/16. So I'm just simply dragging, and I use a Sharpie because it's kind of hard to see a pencil line on a piece of OSB like this. But as you can see, I want to terminate right at the very top. In this case I did. So I know I'm terminated here, or ended there. I know I'm good here, right? Now I'm going to do the exact same thing on this side. So I just pivot to the other side, and I just hold it at 21 7/16. This takes a little bit of practice, you know, you'll get better and better at it as you go, but basically, plus or minus, that's our mark, okay? Now what I do is I take a skill saw or circular saw and cut out my sections here, wherever I need to. This section's obviously we're not going to use that because it's bigger. This section stays, and then I take a jigsaw and jigsaw out my arch. That represents my first piece. I'll dry fit it, make sure it fits, and then I will go into making 3 or 4 more for the rest of the spaces. So it's pretty simple. All right guys, so as you can see, we've got all of our arches cut out. Okay, we used a jigsaw to do so. We created 6 arches, okay? So 6 templates or 6 pieces of 3/8 plywood that we're gonna use to now build our arches, okay? So in between our arches, we need to put backing so that we can connect them. So these pieces here represent the distance between the wall and where the outside edge of the arch is gonna go, okay? Less, I took off 3/8 of an inch for the plywood, okay? So we cut all of our pieces, now we're ready to install. So we ran through, cut all of our arches, cut our pieces of backing support now we're ready to build the arch. So what I do is I typically lay them out, just kind of evenly spaced, and then I set the arch on top, right? Just kind of gently so it doesn't fall over. And then I go ahead and start nailing on. So in this case, I measured up about 11 1/4 up from the edge. That's where my first piece is gonna go, okay? And I just nail it, all right? And then I'll kind of come along, do the same thing so that everything kind of holds in place. Kind of awkward to do at first, but the more frequently you do it, the better you'll get at it, okay? So I just kind of place them arbitrarily, again, just backing for drywall. In this case, we're just using 2x3s, which is what we had left over from the earlier phase of the project. We kind of get our pieces in. I'm gonna leave the center open here because I think our design team would like to put a light in there. So I don't want to get too close to the center. Just gonna kind of put a piece right next or near it. So I just work my way along. I flip the arch over, square everything up so that it's nice and straight when we go to put the next connect the next pieces, and then we install it. So that will be the next step. So as you can see, we nailed off our bottom, or our first part of the arch, okay? I flipped it over, and now this piece is loose. We're gonna install the second part to create our barrel arch, okay? So what I do is I try to get it on a nice flat surface. These are nailed down here. I wanna kind of square up as best I can so that we know we're not installing and having to tweak it later. So I just use a speed square to kind of like line up these pieces here as best I possibly can. In addition, I kind of try to line up the outside edge of the arch, right? To make sure we're somewhat square. So I just kind of tweak it a little bit. Get it close, and then you can always maneuver it once it's nailed off. But for now, we just want to get everything close. Doesn't have to be perfect. And then go ahead and nail off. So I start with one side and work my way over. Just do the same thing on this one. And again, as you can see, I'm just flushing out my pieces with the arch itself. So each 2x3 just kind of sits, even though they're square pieces, and they just kind of work their way around, all right? So again, I just kind of use my straight edge and my speed square to kind of line everything up, get it close, and then nail it up, being real careful not to nail your finger. More important to have them plumb this way, square as best you possibly can, so you don't run into trouble later. Just working our way through, squaring everything up. Believe it or not, it's actually pretty critical that we stay somewhat square as we work our way around. We've got our arch built, okay, it's ready to go in. Square as best we possibly can. I put in a couple pieces of backing. Remember we talked about earlier, the 3/8 inch recessed piece of backing here to allow for our arch to be installed. I did the exact same thing here on the sides. And where I got this angle, you can see it's a pretty extreme angle. I simply took a piece of wood, and as you can see here, all I did was I put it up against the arch, and then I just marked it, right? So I just kind of went like that, marked it. So I have an idea of exactly kind of what I want as far as backing. And then I took a saw and I cut it. Okay, and that's what that represents. That's how I got that angle, guys, okay? So I installed this 3/8 of an inch back on both sides. Now we have backing all the way around, okay? So our plywood, once our arch goes in, we'll have something to nail to, okay? I also went up against the top here and I measured down 5.5 inches, you could see. And that, or sorry, 5 inches, because that's the top of the arch. So when we go to put the arch in, we want our arch to be plus or minus right there so that we know we're square all the way back, okay? So now we just dry fit the arch. If it fits, we install it and nail it off. Good news is this type of an arch is not as heavy. I mean, some of the arches that we do, or that can be done, get awful big and heavy, but you just kind of dry fit it. You just make sure that everything's in the right spot. In this case, we are. I hold it up tight. I set a nail, right? That allows me to kind of free up. Check everything out, make sure we're in good position here. Needs to come over just a little bit. Remember, I have studs to nail into, so I can put backing, or I can nail if I want to. I just set a nail there. Okay, now we just kind of triple check everything to make sure we're good. So we got our arch in, everything's nailed off, backing in place, ready for drywall. Okay, so drywall is going to come and install this drywall. You're never going to see our framing. That's what this rough framing is for. We'll rinse and repeat. We already did one. We'll do one more. And then that's it for our desk cubby, wall framing, and arch 101. So I'll build the next one and we'll put it in and we'll be all done. So we're all done. We're all framed out and cleaned up, and as you can see, we've got our equal spaced desk openings with our arches. Remember back in the very beginning, there was nothing here. It was just a blank wall. We had a drawing that we were going off of, and we decided to stick frame and lay out and install our separate partition walls. We did that first by laying out our top plate and installing that, came back through and installed our bottom plates, right? And then we walked you through step by step on how to stick frame these walls. We put some blocking in, and then we transitioned into our arch measuring and arch framing, okay? We showed you exactly how to measure a true round arch by taking the halfway point and measuring and scribing off of that pivot point, scribing the arch out, cutting it with a jigsaw, and then adding our backing and then installing the arches. So as you can see, it's a very kind of meticulous process, but if you follow it step by step, anybody can do it. The arches, you'll get better and better at it through time. Just practice them, maybe start on a small one and then work your way up. But yeah, all in all, great day. You can see it turned out exactly how the drawing was intended. A lot of fun. Thanks for joining us today, and let us know if you have any questions or thoughts. Hit that like and subscribe button, and we'll continue making content for you.